Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk to you about something that holds the power to transform your life from the inside out, rewiring your brain. It might sound like science fiction, but it's actually grounded in neuroscience and within reach for every one of us. Our brains are not static. For a long time, people believed that once we reached adulthood, our brains stopped changing. But science has proven otherwise. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. This means that we can learn, adapt, and even unlearn deeply ingrained patterns. The brain you wake up with tomorrow doesn't have to be the same one you had yesterday, but how do we rewire it? It starts with awareness. We need to become conscious of the thoughts we think every day. Many of us run on autopilot, reacting the same way to situations, thinking the same thoughts, and reinforcing the same neural pathways. To change your life, you need to change your thoughts. Choose thoughts that support who you want to become, not who you've been. Next is repetition. Rewiring your brain isn't a one-time decision, it's a process. Just as walking a new path through a forest becomes easier the more you use it, so does forming a new mental habit. Whether it's gratitude, self-discipline, or calmness under pressure, these can be cultivated through consistent practice. Action is just as important as thought. If you want to feel more confident, act like a confident person. If you want to be more optimistic, speak and behave as if good things are coming your way. Your actions send powerful signals to your brain about what matters. Over time, the brain will adapt and support this new way of being. We also need to surround ourselves with environments that support our new patterns. If you're trying to rewire your brain for success, spend time around people who think big. If you're aiming for peace, limit your exposure to negativity. The inputs we allow into our lives, conversations, media, habits, are the nutrients for our mental garden. And perhaps most importantly, be patient. Change takes time, but it is absolutely possible. Every time you choose to think differently, act intentionally, and persist through discomfort, you are literally changing your brain. So let's not accept the idea that we're stuck with the minds we were born with or shaped by early life. We can grow, we can evolve, we can rewire. And in doing so, we not only change our lives, we empower ourselves to change the world around us. One of the most fundamental and transformative keys to rewiring your brain is awareness. Without awareness, true change is impossible. We often go through life operating on mental autopilot, reacting to situations with the same thoughts, feelings, and behaviors we've developed over years. These automatic patterns become so ingrained that we rarely pause to question them. But awareness is the light that brings these hidden processes into view. It allows us to observe ourselves objectively and understand how our current mental wiring is influencing our lives. The moment we become aware of what we're thinking, how we're feeling, and why we're acting in a certain way, we gain power, the power to choose something different. And that moment of choice is where transformation begins. Awareness is not simply noticing what's happening around us, it's an inward-looking skill. It requires mindfulness, presence, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. For example, someone who constantly feels anxious might not initially realize that they're feeding that anxiety through a constant internal dialogue of fear and worry. Their brain has been conditioned, perhaps through past experiences or prolonged stress, to default to anxious thinking. This becomes a mental habit, one that feels natural, even though it's detrimental. But once that person starts to observe their thoughts and notice the repetitive, negative narratives they are telling themselves, they are no longer just victims of their own programming. They are now conscious of it. That shift from unconscious reaction to conscious observation is subtle, but it is the foundation of all mental change. Cultivating this level of awareness takes practice. It doesn't happen overnight. Many people are so used to living in distraction, scrolling through social media, multitasking, and numbing uncomfortable emotions, that they never truly sit with themselves long enough to notice what's going on inside. The first step toward greater awareness is simply slowing down. Creating space in your day to reflect, to be still, and to listen to your inner world is essential. Whether it's through meditation, journaling, or simply spending time in quiet thought, these moments of introspection reveal the patterns that have been running your life. You start to recognize the beliefs you've accepted without question, the fears that shape your decisions, and the triggers that lead to reactive behaviors. With each insight, you become more capable of interrupting those patterns and choosing new ones. Another important aspect of awareness is recognizing the physical sensations that accompany your thoughts and emotions. The brain and body are deeply connected. Often before a thought fully forms, the body reacts. You might feel tension in your chest, a pit in your stomach, or a rush of heat to your face. These physical cues can serve as valuable indicators that something is happening internally. Paying attention to them helps you catch emotional reactions before they spiral out of control. For instance, if you notice your heart rate speeding up during a conversation, you might realize that you're feeling defensive or afraid. That realization can prevent you from snapping or shutting down and allow you to respond more thoughtfully. The more in tune you are with your internal state, the more empowered you are to direct your behavior consciously rather than compulsively. Rewiring the brain is a transformative journey that begins with the recognition of its inherent ability to change. Among the many approaches to this change, two powerful and interconnected strategies stand out: conscious repetition and aligned action. These two key elements not only reinforce each other, but also form the core mechanism through which lasting mental and behavioral transformation occurs. Without repetition, new thought patterns fade away before they take root. Without action, even the most profound realizations remain ideas rather than realities. Together, these two forces drive the process of building a new internal framework and shaping a different external life. Conscious repetition is the deliberate practice of thinking, feeling, or imagining a new mental pattern until it becomes familiar to the brain. The more a thought is repeated, the more it becomes hardwired. This is not about merely hoping for a better mindset, or awareness also involves observing your external environment and how it influences your mind. Many of our thoughts and behaviors are shaped by the people we spend time with, the media we consume, and the routines we follow. Becoming aware of these influences helps you see which ones support your growth and which ones hold you back. For example, you might notice that after spending time with a certain group of people, you feel drained or discouraged. That's not a coincidence, that's your environment shaping your mental state. Or perhaps you realize that watching the news every morning fills you with stress before your day even begins. These insights give you the opportunity to make conscious changes, limiting negative inputs, setting boundaries, or seeking out more uplifting and supportive influences. In doing so, you create a mental environment that is more conducive to rewiring your brain in a positive direction. Perhaps the most challenging part of developing awareness is confronting the parts of yourself that you'd rather avoid. We all carry emotional wounds, limiting beliefs and habits that don't align with who we want to become. It's tempting to ignore these parts, to bury them under distractions or rationalizations, but true awareness demands honesty. It asks you to face yourself fully, to look at your fears, insecurities, and regrets, not with judgment, but with curiosity and compassion. When you bring these hidden parts into the light, they lose their power over you. You begin to understand why you do what you do. You begin to see that many of your limitations are not facts, but stories you've been telling yourself. And the moment you see them as stories, you realize that you can write new ones. As your awareness deepens, so does your ability to make intentional choices. You start to notice that you have options in moments where you once felt powerless. You can pause before reacting, You can choose a kinder thought. You can take a breath and respond rather than lash out. These small decisions, repeated over time, begin to reshape your brain. They form new neural pathways that support the person you're becoming. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. You're no longer being driven by old unconscious programming. You're actively creating your mental reality. This is the essence of rewiring your brain, not just thinking differently, but living with awareness, and from that awareness, choosing a new way forward. Awareness is not just a tool, it's a way of life. It is the foundation upon which all personal growth is built. When you cultivate awareness, you take back control of your mind. You stop being a passenger in your own life and become the driver. You start to live deliberately, aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with your values and goals. And as you continue to grow in awareness, you realize that the mind is not a fixed entity. It is a landscape that you have the power to shape. Every moment of awareness is a chance to lay down a new path, to build a better future, and to become more fully yourself. Rewiring your brain is not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to your truest, most empowered self by reshaping how you think, behave, and engage with the world. The process may seem abstract, but it's deeply grounded in science and lived experience. At the heart of this transformation are three essential components: awareness, repetition, and action. These are not isolated techniques, but deeply connected forces that, when practiced together, create real, lasting change. When we understand and apply these principles consistently, we begin to shift from reacting to life out of habit to creating our reality through intention and clarity. The first and perhaps most fundamental element of brain rewiring is awareness. Without it, change is impossible. Awareness is the ability to observe your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in real time, without immediately judging or reacting to them. Most people move through life in a state of mental autopilot, repeating the same patterns day after day. They react to situations with familiar thoughts and emotions, not realizing that these patterns are self-reinforcing. For example, if someone has a belief that they're not good enough, they'll unconsciously look for evidence to support that belief. They might avoid opportunities, misinterpret feedback as criticism, and end up feeling stuck. This cycle continues until they become aware of it. The moment you become aware of a thought, like "I'm not good enough," you create a gap between the thought and your identity. You begin to see that the thought is not who you are. It's just a pattern that you've been repeating. And once you can observe a pattern, you have the power to change it. Awareness invites curiosity. It allows you to ask important questions. Where did this belief come from? Does it serve me? What would I like to believe instead? This kind of reflection brings unconscious programming into the light and gives you the ability to reshape it intentionally. With awareness as the foundation, the next crucial element is repetition. Once you identify the thought patterns or behaviors you want to change, you must begin to practice their opposites deliberately and consistently. The brain changes through repetition, through repeated exposure to the same ideas, the same language, the same feelings. This is how neural pathways are formed and strengthened. If you want to feel more confident, you can't just decide to believe in yourself once. You have to repeat the thoughts and behaviors of a confident person regularly. That means speaking to yourself with encouragement, visualizing success, and affirming your worth, even when it feels unnatural. It's like learning to play an instrument. Your fingers stumble over the keys at first, but with consistent practice, the movements become smooth and automatic. The same principle applies to your mind. When you start to introduce new thoughts, like "I am capable," "I can handle this," or "I deserve good things," your brain may resist at first. It may feel like you're lying to yourself, but over time, the brain begins to accept the new input. It stops defaulting to the old scripts and starts favoring the new ones, simply because they've been reinforced through repetition. And the more emotional energy you bring to these new thoughts, feeling what it's like to truly believe them, the faster your brain rewires itself. However, thoughts alone aren't enough. That's where the third component,
action becomes essential. If awareness helps you recognize old patterns and repetition lays the mental groundwork for new ones, action brings it all into the real world. Taking action aligned with your new beliefs gives your brain tangible proof that change is possible. It turns abstract ideas into concrete experiences. For instance, if you've been repeating the belief, "I am confident," it gains power when you take a risk that scares you, speaking up in a meeting, introducing yourself to someone new, or starting something you've been putting off. These actions provide the brain with a new narrative, one where you're not stuck, not fearful, not unworthy, but empowered, capable, and growing. Importantly, the actions don't have to be huge to make an impact. Small, consistent steps, taking care of your health, setting boundaries, finishing a task, begin to build a new self-image. They reinforce the new neural pathways you're developing through thought. The more you act in alignment with your desired self, the more that self becomes real. Your brain adapts, rewires, and begins to support your new way of being. In this sense, action creates momentum. It moves you beyond intention and into transformation. These three forces, awareness, repetition, and action, form a cycle of growth. Awareness helps you recognize where you are. Repetition trains your brain to think in new ways. Action validates those thoughts and creates a new reality. Together, they change not just what you think, but how you feel, how you show up, and what you believe is possible for you. The process requires effort and patience. There will be days when old patterns resurface, when you feel discouraged, or when progress seems slow. That's natural. But each time you bring awareness to a moment, each time you choose a new thought, each time you take a small action in a new direction, you're making a deposit into the future you're building. It may be invisible at first, but the change is happening. Like planting a seed and watering it every day, the brain grows and transforms with consistent care. Rewiring your brain is not about pretending that everything is fine or avoiding reality. It's about taking ownership of your inner world, so that your outer world begins to reflect the change. It's about recognizing that you have the power, not overnight, but over time, to shape your mind and your life in meaningful. When you commit to practicing awareness, repeating what you want to believe, and acting in alignment with that belief, you don't just hope for a better life, you create it, one thought, one choice, one step at a time.